So the next iteration, right, is CLI. So this is for users that are really comfortable in terminals or code editors, where these code editors and terminals themselves are really being augmented by AI. So with CLI, you have, or command line interface, you have a library of commands. It's added as a package to your editor, and those commands are directly, again, tied to the APIs that allow you to take actions. And so with natural language, you're able to put in a request within your editor, describe what you want to do. The AI interprets that request, and then it identifies from the commands what it would need to do to accomplish that task. And so whether it's a single command or a series of commands, it does its best to achieve what you want to happen. In a very similar vein, there's Celigo MCP, Platform MCP. And so this connects to your LLM client and exposes a series of tools rather than commands. But again, it's using LLM to interpret your request, what you're trying to do, and then choosing the right tool based off of the API to accomplish what you need. And so both CLI and MCP are part of a broader conversation around what's being deemed headless operations. The idea that you're working inside of your AI-enabled app, your client, where you do most of your work, and you're not having to switch between UIs. And so while it's headless and you're not working in UI, this is very different from vibe coding on a solution on the fly, because the operations, the assets, like mentioned before, they're created on the application that you're used to working with in the UI. So it has the performance, the security, the governance, and you're just working in an interface that you prefer. And so in the world of headless operations, CLI, MCP, they seem like very related approaches on the surface, very similar outcomes, but and we want to allow users to choose which one they prefer. But Tyler's going to talk a little bit about the nuances between the two, why you might use one, some of the pros and cons around each.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Yeah, so we've been iterating and moving very quickly over the past couple months for bringing CLI and MCP, Platform MCP, to all users. But first off, we released CLI about maybe a month ago or so. And with the CLI, really it's meant for kind of, we see them in two different personas, right? So CLI really meant for like real, developer heavy. They're in Claude Code, they're in Codex, things that would run bash commands against Celigo. So list out connections, list out flows. And additionally, maybe like partners who are accessing multiple accounts and multiple environments. You can have different profiles set up within the CLI, and then just reference that profile when you're running commands, as opposed to like a Platform MCP, where typically you would have to set up one MCP server like per account and per environment. So it's the two are a little bit different, but two completely different personas that are interacting with them. The CLI would be a little bit more efficient on token usage when you're running commands compared to MCP. But MCP itself is more prevalent throughout the market. So, the vast majority of LLM clients, right, can connect to MCP servers. They can't run CLI commands or bash commands if you're not local, right? Maybe you're in a web browser and you need to connect to Celigo. You wouldn't be running CLI at that point. You would be running MCP server tool calls. And so with that, the MCP server, the Platform MCP server that we're releasing here in probably the next month or so, will allow you to really manage errors within Celigo, fetch flows, build flows, all the stuff that you could do within the CLI, but all within the MCP server context. So we're just letting users, build wherever they are, and giving all the tools available and all the resources that they need to build and accelerate on the platform.
And Tyler, when we talk about these two options, obviously these are extremely powerful. Is there, without being negative, is there dangers to using CLI where you could, using natural language, it could misinterpret your request? How do we want to mitigate that for customers to make sure that they don't end up maybe deleting a flow or something like that? Is that where you would use MCP versus CLI, or where you can start using personal access tokens to make sure that they have the right access?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nate. So currently, to authenticate against the CLI and the MCP server, you almost need like a full access token within Celigo. So you'd have to be an admin with a API token that has full permission sets. So it's, Matt's analogy is typically, it's like giving somebody scissors and they're running around and, they could hurt themselves a little bit along the way. what we're releasing out here in the next week or so is a personal access token capability where you could be scoped directly to what you have access to in the UI. So if you can't do something in the UI, like manage a particular integration, then that personal access token won't let you do it. So that personal access token will be, you can use it for any of our current REST APIs. Manage monitor users can create them, and then you could use it for CLI MCP. And then we're later going to add OAuth in there as well, which is just a different way to gather a personal access token so that you're scoped to what you have access to. And then later down in the call, we're going to get through some of the future enhancements that we've got coming with role-based access, but you can kind of see where this is going, where you will have more finer grained permissions and privileges that we can give users later on, where you can then segment it even further for your personal access token.
Yeah, very cool. I know we have a demo here, a demo I actually will walk through with CLI for something I was just building myself. So let me share my screen here. Right, so I'm in Claude Code here, and I'm just showing the building of a lookup cache, right? This is not necessarily something super technical or taking a lot of time, but what I really liked about this was I'm trying to build a lookup cache for the 50 US states and their abbreviations. So while you working in the UI would be very simple to build this lookup cache, this is kind of doing two things, right? It's building the lookup cache, taking the actual UI actions, but it also has the data around the states, right? So I don't have to create a list. So you can see here that I quickly have the 50 states available with their abbreviations to be used in a flow. So you could think of an action that maybe doesn't take a lot of time in the UI, but maybe takes a lot of research. The CLI is very quickly able to do that because it has both the context, the knowledge from the LLM itself, as well as access to perform the commands. And then the next step I'll take is I'll actually build an entire flow. So this is certainly more configuration time than just building a lookup cache, but it'll very quickly go through and choose the commands, and it'll stop and ask me if I want to allow this, right? So I can always allow or allow once, where it can go through. You can see here it's consuming tokens on Claude Code, but readily available at no cost for Celigo users. We really see this as kind of powering up the user to be able to do more and more on the platform, and we're really excited about. So I've seen awesome use cases where it's building agents within flows to accomplish things. It's using the secure connections that I've already established on my instance here, so I'm not having to remake that from scratch, and it's just going through the process, choosing from the commands and building it for me already. So we'll see here in just a second as it finishes up that it'll have the complete flow. It actually added it to a tile that I already had around Shopify and Business Central, which is really cool. I didn't even give it those instructions, but it kind of took the context to know to add it here. So I wanted to add a flow that synced over my customers. I already had an order flow, which was really cool to see with really just a single line of text that I provided to Claude using the CLI.